Oh boy,
Man,
that
that was
was a weird
another.
week.
Yeah, I feel like I barely survived. I feel like I'm on the injury report now after that day. I
I
mean,
mean, you'd be joining everyone else, so here we
right?
go.
I mean, all in all, I guess it wasn't the worst week for injuries. Seemed like it
Right.
survived. It feels like the guys who got injured were players who, teams that already had injuries. It's like they just
Yeah,
can't stop for some guys, and some fantasy teams have been luckier than others and just stayed healthy, and others are like, this is just a
for sure.
disaster.
I have a friend who just cannot get off the injury list, and you know, we were talking in our show, but it's illegal to play a non-player. We have punishments for it, so but he'd rather do that than actually drop a guy because all the good guys are hurt and everyone else is not. So man, it's early, but the injuries are piling up, and you know how injuries are in the NFL. They don't seem to go away right away. So we'll see what happens. But what a weird week. Not that much scoring again. You had an over under with the Chargers and the Steelers at 35 and a half, and they didn't even get close. So it's a weird offense. And then you saw the Saints and the Eagles. There's just not a lot of scoring here in the first few weeks. We'll see what happens though.
Yeah, it's been a real different start to the NFL season. You normally see defenses kind of sell out to stop the run, get
Yeah.
beat by big plays over the top. And a lot of times we like to say that, the offense is playing bad, but I think maybe some of it's defense playing
Yeah.
good. Like we see all these injuries, but they're not as many on the defensive side. And I think it's a little bit easier to go through training camp on the D, not
Yeah.
hitting and getting into just your base sets and not having to worry as much. Whereas the offense, you
Yeah.
don't run the same play more than once per game. Defense, you're going to run that same play 5 to 10 times a game. Probably you got a few variations, but more or less your base D is your base D, and you like to sit in it. And if it's working, why would you get out of it? Really,
I
the
mean,
only time you see teams
Look at
scoring
this.
is when they go to prevent.
Yeah, look at this. The Saints Eagles though. You can't tell me that was not a disgusting game. You and I had to watch that game, and that was brutal to watch. I'm looking at my text now, and all it says is like, "Why didn't they keep giving the ball to Saquon?" Literally every time that guy touched it, it was incredible. But anytime they tried to do anything with everyone else, it was awful. And the Saints, what happened? I looked foolish during the show right before because I'm talking like, hey, the Saints are for real. Saints are for real. What happened? Rashid Shaheed, anyone check where he is? Did he go missing?
He just didn't catch his targets, same number
Yeah,
of targets. They didn't come down, it was close on a deep ball. And it's just, do you get the deep balls or not? Those type of players, it's hard to predict what's going to happen. They either
yeah,
get the deep ball or they don't. And when they don't get the deep balls, it can get ugly. And it was real ugly for Shaheed. No catches, I mean, he's looking like a
right.
tight end out there.
Yeah, I know. And speaking of tight ends, like 3 weeks, and there's nowhere to be found. I am so happy I didn't spend early draft picks on tight ends because Mark Andrews 20% snaps, it looks like, around there. When in the world have we ever seen that?
Yeah, no, I mean, you'd think that this was the preseason with the way that they're ramping him up slow. I mean, they don't have to throw the ball, so it
Yeah,
makes a big difference. It's hard for the Ravens to really get down in games with the way they play, love to control the ball. The defense looks good, but tight ends all over the NFL. I mean, Dallas Goddard finally showed up, but it took all of their starting receivers going down. It's like, what are
yeah,
we gonna do? Throw it to Johan Dotson? Like, not so much. Like,
no, no,
that's not really an option. Like Johnny Wilson was out there. I mean, he basically had three tight ends more or less, like with the
I
skill
know
sets that's out there. So, these elite wide receivers, the corners have gotten better and better. The linebackers have gotten better and better. The safeties have gotten better and better. And now it's time for the offenses to catch up or get back to running the ball. I mean,
yeah,
nobody knows how to run the ball anymore. I don't know if it's the offensive lines or just the defense is so much more athletic.
for sure. I do think they're game planning as a whole now. I think they used to be like whatever tight ends, they are what they are, but now they're such better schemes. There's such better athletes that there are no mismatches on tight end anymore, I don't think, or they plan for it as well. Or now, we've had years of tight end um, explosion that I think safeties are now training in college and high school to guard these tight ends. And so I do think that it is catching up defensively for those schemes. There's not as much of a one-on-one mismatch. The other thing that was crazy that we were just sitting here trying not to lose our minds was, is Carolina going to make it? Are they going to be okay? Because I know, again, I feel bad for Bryce Young, but it just goes to show a veteran quarterback can make a huge difference on any team, even the worst team that we've seen in the first 2 weeks.
And maybe part of it too is we saw the NFL shift away from those pure pocket passing quarterbacks that had to have great accuracy. I mean, that was what a quarterback was built around for decades. And now we've seen this shift to where they really want this mobile guy that can run, move around. A Trevor Lawrence is like, oh, this is going to be perfect. But you look at the accuracy and it's just not there at an NFL level. And so when they're not using their legs to pick up first downs, and what's it going to do for you? If the D lineman can catch up to you, still sack you, you got to be able to throw, get it in a window, and it's not there. It's a problem. And so now you see a guy like Andy Dalton come in. He was never really the worst quarterback in the NFL. He just wasn't good enough to win a Super Bowl. Right. So teams didn't want him to be their starter because they're like, well, he would get to the playoffs and then would probably lose. Well, you just saw what it looks like when you put him on a team with competent receivers, not even great receivers, competent receivers. All of a sudden, hello, Deontay Johnson. I mean,
Chuba Hubbard too. Like, here we go. This is what it is. And now with Chuba Hubbard looking good in this offense, that's a huge sign for everyone sitting on Jonathan Brooks right now. And it might be worth you sitting on it now, because if it was still Bryce Young, I know people were worried, like, what's the point of holding on to this guy for 5 weeks potentially for no production? So that's a good sign as well.
Yeah, I mean, they look like one of the better offenses in the league today. I mean, that's not something you're expecting to see, but out of nowhere, here they are.
The NFL strikes again. Vegas beats Ravens. Ravens beat Dallas. Carolina somehow beats Raiders. It just that's why it's any given Sunday. That was so much fun to watch.
Hopefully Dallas doesn't have to play Carolina soon, because that will
they'd be cooked. It'd be like 70-0.
Dalton's revenge tour is beginning. I think.
Hey, we saw Joe Flacco last year. It could happen. Andy Dalton's much younger, so.
Hey, if Flacco was a free agent right now, I think he'd be getting signed. Like,
I know.
The Colts might actually have to think about putting him in at some point. Like, luckily Richardson's been winning, but if they get into a blowout, they're probably going to put Flacco on just to kind of show him off. Maybe they're going to dangle him as trade bait to some other team. Like,
to your point.
Richardson is kind of a rookie though too. Right. He's your prototypical pure athlete back there that just doesn't have the throwing experience. And sometimes I look at these games and I'm like, I don't think they need to practice plays. I think they need to just practice running routes and throwing balls. Like, get the reps of just go out there and throw 100 balls in practice to these guys on their routes, because they're running good routes and the ball is just not even catchable.
Yeah, I mean, look, Justin Fields and the Steelers are 3-0, but I don't know how long you can do that with just one passing touchdown in this league. I don't care how athletic you are. I don't care how great your defense is, but at some point that's going to catch up to you. And, Anthony Richardson doesn't have the game experience as Justin Fields to kind of maneuver it all. But you got to either commit with you if you're Anthony Richardson. Start running the ball or start throwing these accurate medium passes, or you're going to score nothing for your team and you get lucky with defensive stops, and you're not going to play Caleb Williams every single week. So it's time to get it together, because a lot of people depend on that guy for fantasy.
Or pound the rock. I mean, I wouldn't, why aren't they running the ball 40 times a game between Jonathan Taylor, Anthony Richardson? Just line up in I formation, pound it, and then play action. If you can only throw deep, lean into it. Sometimes it's like the skill set is what it is, and you've got to just accept that we should really be going play action, look deep. If it's not there, we dump it to a tight end or running back, or let Richardson run. I mean, I think a drop back and scramble from Richardson would probably be their best play right now, So
Sure. Absolutely.
sometimes we're going to see these teams evolve and adjust and see what's
Yeah.
working on film. They spend a lot more time than us looking at their own teams and self scouting and
Yeah.
some just weird matchups,
No, yeah.
No, we're spending 24 hours.
It's our job. I'm sleeping on the couch at the office, Yeah, speaking of, let's go over some of the overachievers we're writing down. For me, the first thing that stood out was Sam Darnold. 4 touchdowns against Houston. Where the heck did that come from? And man, that guy, I think, is going. You talk about revenge tour. This is a "I told you so" tour. That, hey, if you don't put me on the Jets, if you don't put me on the Carolina Panthers, I actually could be pretty decent. And he goes to show why he was a top pick.
Yeah, it may just be really good coaching there. I mean,
Sure.
O'Connell has shown that he can do it with quarterback after quarterback, and they were telling us all offseason that they believed in Sam Darnold even before JJ got hurt. They were saying it was going to be Darnold, these first few weeks, and now we're seeing why they trust him in that offense, and it doesn't matter if you throw for less than 200 yards if you're getting the touchdowns up there.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
he's widely accurate. He's got incredible weapons, and I agree. It's way better coaching staff than he has ever had. I mean, Kirk Cousins should have never left. I mean, everywhere he throws is a freaking touchdown right now. So like, you got Aaron Jones, Justin Jefferson, Naylor. Like, everywhere you throw the ball, it's a guy who can go for a touchdown. So I'm happy for him, but I do think he's a viable fantasy player when it comes to a shootout type situation. Houston, not really even a shootout, but I do think that Sam Darnold should be worth rostering for sure at this point.
yeah, probably a matchup based
Yeah.
QB2, definitely is going to be owned in super flex leagues and maybe even a backup quarterback in deeper one quarterback leagues going forward. Emmanuel Wilson went out there. Everybody thinks Josh Jacobs, it's all his show. Well, not so fast. Emmanuel Wilson has been looking really good these first few weeks, limited opportunities. And then this week breaks out with just about as many touches as Jacobs had, takes a screen. I think it was a screen or a wide receiver swing, but looked really good, breaking through guys, took it all the way to the house for a touchdown, getting really good yards per carry too. And he looks really good, and I think it might be his job as the backup to Josh Jacobs going forward. Even when Marshawn Lloyd comes back, he's been so banged up, and Emmanuel Wilson's just a lot more of a change of pace compared to Jacobs, So if Jacobs were to get hurt, I mean, I think Emmanuel Wilson would be a guy that you'd have to grab right away off waivers. He'd at least be in a timeshare with Lloyd if he's not leading that situation. And it'd be interesting to see it. I mean, we probably won't see it, but I'd be curious to see what he'd do with 20 touches in a game because he's shown just flashes of really, really good speed and vision. And, with a team like Green Bay that is expected to be throwing, I think he's a little bit of a better fit. And it's more of Josh Jacobs, if you need to get in that 6-minute offense and grind it out. But when you're shotgun lined up wide, Emmanuel Wilson's a really good fit there.
Yeah, I mean, he's explosive. He does fit that scheme really well. Game one, just some of his runs are powerful. He just cruises through those holes, and so I really like him. He's a strong candidate. And look, their whole goal clearly is to preserve Josh Jacobs. So what are you going to do to preserve Josh Jacobs? You're probably going to try not to run him into the ground, which means let's get these guys other touches. So I do think he's a good stash for sure right now. Kyron Siren, let's go. Keep it going. Finally showing up. I mean, he had a decent week last week, but this is the Kyron Williams that you saw. 20 plus carries, getting every goal line touch. They even audible to Kyron Williams on the goal line for the game tying touchdown, which is a big move by Matthew Stafford, who clearly could have probably done it himself at that point with the 49ers flailing and I mean, just giving up everything in the world to them. But I think that's a great sign. I mean, he was teetering in the top. Is he top 10? Is he not in the rankings? And I think this is a week to show that, hey, remember, this guy finished top 3 in almost every running back statistic. He would have done even better if he didn't miss 3 to 4 or 5 games that he missed last year. So I think this is a welcome back party for him for sure.
Yeah, who cares if he's returning punts? Clearly,
Yeah,
it's
I know.
not the scare that everybody
Right.
thought it was. And Blake Corum, no offensive touches, so
Yeah,
he's not the guy there. Ronnie Rivers, that guy's a fun little player out
I
there.
know.
Like I haven't seen a guy play that big that's our size, probably just about since Darren Sproles was out there.
Dude,
I mean, to be
Danny
able to pick up
Woodhead. I think of those two guys, Darren Sproles and
right
Danny Woodhead.
picking up the blitz,
I
like
know.
coming in the center. I mean, Ronnie Rivers a nice little
Tough dude.
change of pace. Liked him on that fake punt too. I mean,
Yep.
that was really nice. But the majority of the work going to Kyron, and he's not that big either, but he
Yeah,
really knows how to slip through the holes, and he's got a nose for the end zone. It's just
I know.
undeniable. And that front flip in on that pass, that was that was my second favorite play of the week. You know, the hook and ladder.
Oh, that
That
was
that was
dirty.
something else from Amon Ra. I mean, just the design on that. That was not an old school just
No,
hitch like, oh, clearly the hook and ladder's coming. No, I mean that thing had all sorts of design all
it was
over it.
amazing.
That was really fun to see, and
Yeah.
an interesting way that counts as a stat. Jahmyr Gibbs, no catches for the game, but gets 20 receiving yards and a receiving touchdown with no catches.
It's
So
bizarre. I know
very
every time something gets lateraled or like fumbled, everyone's like, "Who gets the yards? What happens here?" And you just kind of have to let it play out. It's always the guy who ends up with the ball last.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's definitely something to look into. The next gen stats be
Yeah,
fun to see like a breakdown of the whole play and like, okay, this offensive lineman gets 6 receiving yards. This guy gets
yeah,
4.
they like
This
divvied
guy
it up.
they, like chunk it all out. I think that's how it works, but
Right.
it's always hard to keep track of.
Yeah.
But
If
that
DJ Moore beats me, okay, so I'm like tied. I just looked at my leagues. If that team beats me because DJ Moore had a 50-yard bomb for no touchdown, I'm gonna be so upset. That was such a stupid play on the 1-yard line. That was pretty funny. And if I lose by 2 points, I'm gonna be very sad because of that.
but a Hail Mary that's completed at the 1, that thing for the majority of the time when he catches that, you think he's getting into the end zone,
Yeah,
and somehow that defender just hangs on
I
to him,
don't.
tried to steal the ball from him. It's like he had to secure the catch before he
Yeah,
could go for the goal line, and so ends up at the 1. Kind of a weird receiving line too for DJ Moore at the end of the day. Has a 50-yard catch and still has like 6 or 68. Like,
yeah.
not quite sure how that works. Like, what exactly is Caleb Williams doing out there? It's a little weird, but Roma Dunze finally breaking out, one of our
Huge.
overachievers, and that was my favorite celebration of the day. That Caleb and Rome fighting
I know,
over the
trying to
ink ball.
find.
It's like, what do you? I mean, I think probably you should take it to like a memorabilia shop,
Cut it in
like
half.
saw it in half, have
Yeah,
it stacked up for both guys. Make sure that each of them get a little piece of that memento because it really is. Your first touchdown. You're never going to score your first touchdown again. This one-time opportunity, and so kind of cool that they both do it. And it's nice to see Rome getting over 100 yards, had a few big plays, really involved in the offense, and a good game for Caleb as well. They were down big, so they started throwing just all over the field. And like we said, that Hail Mary at the end of the half for just pure yardage sake. But hey, still, you got it up there. You gave him a chance. That's all you can ask with a Hail Mary, I guess.
What are you more? So 2 overachievers here. What are you more impressed by? First of all, I played Devin Singletary too, and he sat down on the 1. So, it kind of evens out a little bit, I guess, at the end of the day. I played DJ Moore, who didn't get the touchdown, and Devin Singletary, who sat down on the 1. But are you more impressed by Devin Singletary, 100-plus total yards, a touchdown, could have been 2 against Cleveland, or Jawan Jennings, 11 receptions, 12 targets, 175 yards and 3 touchdowns? I guess, obviously, it's Jennings is more impressive, but what is more sustainable? Who can continue to come close?
I think Singletary, it's a little bit more sustainable just because it is his backfield and there's not somebody ahead of him that's injured, giving him the opportunity. Jennings probably for the next 3-4 weeks, you can expect some good production, but 11, 175 and 3, that's going to be a career high. Like, I'm sorry. Like, maybe you could do
Who started?
Do something more than that.
40 points. I guaranteed either on the waiver wire or on the bench. There's no shot anyone. like that's so rare. 40 points for a wide receiver.
Angry fantasy guy Dan Linder. That's who started him. Started him against me in one league.
Oh man!
All about the guy.
Tell him to buy a lottery ticket. That's insane.
Right. Well, he is quite the gambler. The riverboat gamblers are the guys who start a guy like that because no, he did. He started him in a couple of leagues.
Wow.
He wasn't sure about it. He started him over Xavier Worthy, and so it's like when you gamble in the draft, you're gonna have to gamble in the waivers. So you take some shots. A couple of guys injured though too. The injuries hit you. He's got Puka. So what are you gonna do? You gotta kind of
desperate
find a guy. And we got some extra spots in that league for starters too. So, like it is a 12-man, 10 starters.
That's a grind.
Our new dynasty league. He started him against me in that one, so a little tough. But give him credit for putting him in there. But Singletary, I think he can sustain it. He's not that type of player. Like a lot of that was on that last run to seal the game, and I really wish he would have done a little bit more math because that score would have put them up 2 scores. It wasn't like you were up 1 and scoring a touchdown would have given the other team an opportunity to win the game. You were going to pretty much put it out of reach. I mean, we did see an onside kick successfully recovered this week, so that was the first of the year. But the odds
they still didn't win. Baltimore didn't even. Dallas didn't even come close to winning still, and they cut the onside kick.
Well, they should have attempted another one, I guess, because the onside kick is a higher probability than their defense getting a stop 100%. These days. And it was nice to see a couple of tight ends overachieve though. Yeah. Both Dallas Goedert and Cole Kmet. I mean, Cole Kmet, a big beneficiary of Caleb Williams' big day, going down early, and sometimes that's what it takes for us to see these huge passing games is a team get down 14, 20 points early and have to play the whole second half, just abandon the run, just throw. And a lot of times it's, the tight end, he starts off blocking, he leaks out, and the deep zone, no one's open, so they just dump it to the tight end. Big numbers for him. Dallas Goedert looked really impressive, though. Had a couple of great catches, 2 just huge runs, puts up a $170 through the air as a tight end. I mean, we're not going to see that when A.J. Brown is back, and also Devontae Smith going down with a concussion. Brutal hit in that game. But Goddard was right there to step up, ready to play.
Yeah, I do think this is the Goddard and Cole Kmet, if you want to add an argument, that we were expecting a year or 2 ago, right? Like we thought these guys would be huge breakout candidates. Goddard's had a couple of decent years, but we thought with just a better offense, better quarterbacks, they're getting better. Jalen Hurts is getting better. That you'd see this type of production. I do like Cole Kmet a lot. I think he's been right there on the cusp. We thought Justin Fields would use him as a safety blanket. You got to throw in order to have that happen. So, but I do think Cole Kmet is going to be that guy now.
And with seeing what's going on with the rest of the tight ends across the league, I think that might show us a little bit more of why their production isn't consistent. It's just they're not going to be the number one option in most teams, and they're just that much slower, and the defense is that much better at covering those guys. So it's got to be the right situation, the right scheme for tight ends to really have big days.
Yeah, definitely. And it can benefit other players like Travis Kelce getting blanketed, Rashee Rice having a career year right away. All right. A lot of good comes with a lot of bad when it comes to the NFL. I think our list of underachievers is pretty large. I mean, you go first.
Yeah, well, the tight ends doing it again. And we already talked a little bit about Mark Andrews, just completely MIA. It's a guy that was drafted really high, not even a target. You'd like to at least see if he's got no catches for no yards, at least give me 4 or 5 targets. Maybe he gets hit while he's trying to make a catch. Some things just don't go your way. If you're not even targeted, you don't have a chance to score points. I mean, this isn't Taysom Hill where you're getting carries. You're not seeing that for Mark Andrews. So I don't know if it's just a really slow start with the car accident. Clearly a weird game script as they get up early and then just run the ball, try to take the air out on Dallas. But Andrews and Likely shut down. And then also Travis, I don't know what these tight ends are doing, but it's just it's not going to be a big week. We're seeing, we're just seeing no production from tight ends. I just don't expect him to do anything tonight either. So it's a slow start for the tight end position as a whole. So we'll
Yeah,
see what happens. But I don't expect them to turn it around until we see more injuries on defense and the weather kind of turns. When we get to the colder weather games, I think it's going to be a little bit better for those tight ends, a little bit more size and girth and able to break some tackles. But it's been a slow start for all tight ends.
yeah, and I'm not rooting for injuries, but injuries will happen over time too in the season to linebackers, cornerbacks, DBs. That's gonna take a toll on defenses and put people out of whack, which opens up spaces. It's gonna be definitely later down the season, but I don't know. It just seems like they're not targeting tight ends, and that they'd rather have their number 2 wide receiver like Sam Laporta. They'd rather have Jameson Williams than Sam Laporta. So we'll keep an eye on that for sure. One of my duds, Davante Adams. I mean, you go from an incredible game on a comeback against one of the best teams in the league, one of the most skilled teams in the league, to going 4 receptions, 40 yards against Carolina. And I know for a fact they are not one of the more talented teams in the league. So really hard to read this wide receiver who was already on the cusp of whether you're a wide receiver 1 or 2. Should you take him in the first 2 rounds, early in the first 2 rounds, or should you take him later in the 3rd round? It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of unknown, and now it just adds to it, and it's kind of loses your confidence in a player that probably has the skill, but you're not sure. And even, we watched the news conference at the end, but Antonio Pierce was saying people were, making business decisions out there. And how can you trust a team that they're down? They're not going to try to fight back and get those points. So a little scary there for Davante Adams owners for sure.
Yeah, there were a couple of plays that I saw where he had the ball in his hands and got hit and lost it. And I think he could have made the catch if he came back to the ball a little bit more,
Right.
but he would have gotten just absolutely destroyed. And so where Antonio Pierce is saying business, I think he made the right business decision because this is your number 1 receiver. What do you want him to do? You want him to get hurt or concussed just to make one catch? I think that's where a lot of times we're seeing these defensive coaches no longer being the head coach of a team because they want everybody to play like a defensive player. Yeah. And it's just not the case. And the Raiders is who I've lost faith in. I mean, they just couldn't put up anything against the Carolina Panthers. Where's the game plan to get Davante Adams involved? And I mean, you want to call him out. I think he's going to call his agent and say, hey, I'm ready for that trade now. I don't care where it is. Anywhere is better than staying here in Vegas because I've got a coach that wants me to get clocked in the head for a 12-yard gain in week 3. And without him, what chance do they have? I mean, they've already got a horrible quarterback situation. Their running back situation is also one of the worst in the NFL. So you got no run game, no quarterback, not a great offensive line. Defense is pretty suspect. I mean, what do you want these guys to do?
Yeah, that franchise is in big trouble. And his stock will only go down if Aiden McConnell and like Gardner Minshew have no confidence in their game. They're going to be so careful with their passes. They're not going to try to target their number 1 guy who's blanketed. So keep an eye on that for sure.
I mean, you got to try something out here. Quarterback play is just so tough right now. We talked about it a little bit earlier. Anthony Richardson, 10 of 20, 167, 2 picks. I mean, you got to change a few things up. The incompletions, I don't mind. The INTs, you have to. There's
that one in the red zone was bad. That was really bad.
And there's some picks that aren't the worst thing. I mean, I think if you're throwing for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns and 2 picks, you'll take that. But if you're not throwing for 200 yards, at least keep control of the ball, get it moving forward, tuck the ball and run. Didn't get much with his legs. I think only 26 yards or so rushing. So just not quite the game you want to see, especially in fantasy. I mean, this guy who was drafted as a top 5 fantasy quarterback. And again, we're seeing why it's so dangerous to take a quarterback so early because they're just so inconsistent week to week when you rely on the legs and not the arm. The arm is the thing that you can really count on. That's why we get draft quarterbacks so high as you think they're more consistent. But when it's the legs you're counting on, not so much. And a bunch of just, number 2 or flex running backs that really just are not producing, not looking great as runners. Rachaad White, Tony Pollard, Jaylen Warren, all under 20 yards rushing, none of them over 20 yards receiving. I mean, that's kind of why you think Rachaad White and Jaylen Warren were worth drafting, as they were going to be really good receivers for you. Not doing it there as well. Pollard, you thought with Spears banged up, was going to get a lot of work. Tennessee had a good matchup, but
Will Levis happened. Will Levis happened. Yeah, I have a lot of wide receivers. James Conner, throw it in there. I don't think Detroit's defense is that good, but I do think you got to feed the ball to him more. Under 20 total yards is brutal. Brandon Ayuk should have had a big game, but dropped so many passes. He continues to drop. It's a problem. CeeDee Lamb, no show really compared to the rest of the games. And Rashid Shaheed, as we mentioned, truly had some passes right in his chest and didn't get it done. So
known for his speed, not his hands. So
I guess I thought if you're a wide receiver, you're known for both, but I guess not.
Not if you don't have the draft pedigree, those late guys. That's kind of why they're drafted late. They don't have the hands, and so some of these guys I like for dynasty are a little bit of that. They're guys without the hands. Trey Tucker, the guy's open deep. The Raiders like him. He's the number 3 receiver, clearly, I think. So in dynasty, he's a guy I like grabbing, especially if Devontae Adams were to get traded. You'd think he'd bump up into that number 2 role, and maybe in a few years he develops into more of a Rashid Shaheed. It's kind of what you see is early, if they get those deep balls, eventually, hopefully they can round out the game, because getting open deep is one of the hardest things to do. It's not something that you normally see develop later, whereas those inside and underneath passes, something you could develop. And KaVontae Turpin for the Dallas Cowboys, I think, is a similar player. He flashes rarely here and there, but that's the kind of player you want on a dynasty bench to kind of develop, somebody that you see it out of here and there. Hopefully it eventually develops into a more consistent thing.
Yeah. We mentioned Cole Kmet. See if you can go get him. It's, might be tough after this week, but he looks like he could be good. Like there's something happening there. I like Calvin Austin, Pittsburgh wide receiver, speedster as well. Justin Fields found him a couple times. I do think he's worth holding on and stashing. And then Roschon Johnson, he's getting a lot of looks. Last year he had a brutal concussion that I think he got amnesia from. So I think he remembers how to be a running back now, and he's getting a lot of opportunities. And they don't like DeAndre Swift. It's clear that they don't like his play style and doesn't like him blocking back there for Caleb Williams. So Roschon Johnson's going to get a lot more touches this season, especially with how it's going.
Seems like the Bears' offensive line doesn't like anybody on the team.
No, that's true. That's also
they're not willing to block.
DeAndre Swift is like out there with them.
Running backs, they're just they're design that one play where Swift lost like 10 yards. That was one of the worst design plays. Like I was like, at some point you got to tell the running backs it's okay to throw that ball away. Like you have no other option. You're not going to get away. Just throw it away. Throw the ball out of bounds to the yard markers. The running quarterbacks are taught to do it. Sometimes you got to tell these guys to do it. And one more guy I like in Dynasty might be available. Should be if it's not too deep. Noah Fant, this guy is the only tight end in Seattle. We saw him flash with some yards. I think he's still got the speed. He's still relatively young for a tight end. A lot of times we think that these guys are busts because they don't produce right away. Really, you're not getting that grown man girth until you're in your late 20s, early 30s. And that's what you need to play tight end in the NFL. You're not going to – it's really hard to have a good balance of size and speed in the NFL, and it's really that 27 to 32 is that wheelhouse age for tight ends.
Yeah, Geno's heating up. He looks good. I know it was a banged-up Miami team, but that Seattle offense is heating up pretty well. So, all right, are we clear? I gotta go home. I think my wife is texting me and telling me that she's gonna murder me. All right, we gotta go.
My kids are sick. This is gonna be a long week.
Yeah,
long week, and they're giving us the week off next week, so that's nice. Hopefully they don't have some fill-ins for us. I don't want to lose our job on our week off. It's
probably AI. They'll probably get some AI.
Right, they'll just recreate us. It'll be better than us too. It's brutal out here.
Yeah.
Put that in our next contract. No AI replacements.
All right. We'll talk soon.
All right. Take care.